Frank Klose covers the Phillies for 97.3 ESPN.com. His Phillies mailbag is a regular feature here on the Sports Bash. Right now, let's take a look at what questions you guys had today as Frank Klose joins us here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And if you're watching the live video, Frank's got a bear behind him over there. And hopefully that bear doesn't get too angry with you today.
Yeah, I'm in the Pocono Mountains, so here for a couple days, and this is where I get my best lighting with the bear behind me.
The bear behind you. There you go. He's in the Poconos. There's a bear. This is going crazy. All right. Frank, a couple things. The Phillies had the day off, obviously, yesterday. They needed to cool down a little bit. Let me hear your overview of everything that happened in that series, specifically Girardi, the blow-up. I mean, is this something that has been kind of building, or is this a one-time thing? And it's kind of behind this team?
I think this was mostly a one-time thing. You know, the thing about Segura, I can't remember the exact number, and I've been meaning to look it up. He had such a long errorless streak before this week. And honestly, the only reason I could think Joe Girardi was being angry about it is if he thought that Segura wasn't perhaps giving enough effort. I think Girardi has said in the past that physical errors he's okay with, but the mental errors are the things that bother him. So if he was upset, I think it would be because he does not believe Segura gave his all on that play. But it could also be the fact that everybody's banged up. He had nobody to go to. When Scott Kingery hit the wall, might have gotten concussed. He had to talk to Bryce Harper and see if they would have to put Bryce Harper in right field or Vince Velasquez in the outfield. So things kind of hit ahead there. Your number 5 starter going just an inning and a third, that's not good, to say the least. I think it was a whole bunch of frustrations all at once. And the fact that the Phillies hung into that game was I guess that's the positive to take out of that.
I don't know that they hung in,
but they managed to get 8 runs.
They didn't really hang in. They fought back, though. I think you can give them that.
Right. Yeah, and it's a shame because a lot of those defensive miscues, including from their 2 middle infielders that were playing the corner outfield, if you had your starters out there, that's a game where maybe you have the opportunity to catch up because not all those runs are scored.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you had Miller playing left, Kingery playing right. I mean, Odubel Herrera, who's the second baseman by trade, playing center. You had 3 infielders playing the outfield. I said, poor Chase Anderson. This is the defense that he's got behind him. And then, Segura, who has been moved all over too. I mean, he's played short. He played third last year for the most part. They moved him over to second. So he's been kind of, and he's been a solid defensive player. But the 2 plays that he doesn't make, I mean, the one, him and Maton, I mean, that's Maton's ball, right?
Yeah, I believe so. But I think that's why Girardi was mostly frustrated is that they're so far down. The rest of their defense is so out of place. He needs his guy to be his guy, and Segura at second base is probably one of the better defenders on this team.
All right, Frank, let's look inside the mailbag today and see what we got. You had a lot of questions this week to choose from. Let's go to this one because I think this is a pressing one. You just mentioned Chase Anderson did not pitch well. His ERA is almost 7 now. We know it's only a matter of time before Vince Velasquez is another question mark. So, Spencer Howard, will we see him in the next week or two? He is lined up pitching on the same day as Anderson now.
I think that the Phillies would have called him up today if he didn't just pitch. I think that there's a really good chance that Spencer Howard will join the Phillies come the time for his next turn in the rotation. Now, the Phillies have to play with the roster a few ways. That does not mean you promote him now. I mean, let's face it, the Phillies are so short on the bench with healthy position players. You don't want to tie up a spot for someone who will be a starter in a few days. But I can see the Phillies perhaps bringing him up on Saturday if that's when that rotation spot is going to take its spot. And think about it this way, when you look at what he's doing at AAA, he's allowed 1 earned run in 9 innings. And kind of the question becomes, is there any more that he could possibly do at AAA to develop? And if the answer is no, well, then it's time to consider bringing him up. Additionally, the Phillies have all along said they were going to limit Spencer Howard's innings this year. Well, if the Phillies are going to do that, they've already kind of done so up to this point because he's only had a few innings in the major leagues. He's been pitching short starts in the minor leagues. If his inning limit is short, do you want those innings to be at AAA, or do you want those innings to be with your big club where they could perhaps help your organization even more? So I think the Phillies want to have him up soon. I think they're still going to try to limit his innings, but as I think I've said before, you can trade for somebody in July to maybe help with that. But the Phillies need help right now. And so I can see Spencer Howard coming up really, really soon, especially with there's other places on the roster, including the pitching department, that aren't doing so well. This could make your team a whole lot better right away. But I think here's the important thing. When the Phillies bring him up, they need to know what they're going to do with him. Because at the beginning of the year, they said, well, we think we'll have him be a reliever this year because we want to limit his innings. And then they saw what they were getting out of the back of the rotation, and then they made him a starter again. So I just hope if they come up, they have a plan and they stick to that plan.
Yeah. Let me ask you about Spencer Howard. What did the team view him as? A 2, a 3, and what do maybe they think he is now? Has that changed?
It's really kind of hard to say. I do believe that many in the organization felt he had towards the top of the rotation kind of stuff. But like anybody, we've said this before, throwing hard is something that a lot of people do these days, right? So that in itself doesn't make you a superstar or a successful starting pitcher. Really, it's about the movement of his pitches. His catcher, JT Realmuto, really sings his praises along those lines. And so I think the hard part was last year, the fact that there was no AAA season for him to pitch, that he went from being on the Double-A roster at the end of 2019 to jumping into the major leagues at a tough time, and then he got hurt a little bit. So it's kind of messed with the evaluation, I suppose. But because they said, all right, first he's going to be a reliever, now he's going to be a starter, they're just stretching him out now. So has anything changed since before the shutdown? That's one of those big question marks. You just got to let him pitch and see where it goes.
All right, Frank, another interesting question for you is from Evan, and he wants to know, what's the ceiling for Nick Maton? I mean, I guess he kind of seemed like a journeyman type of 4A player. He's been pretty good. I don't know. Is he just on a hot streak right now, or is this a guy that just is maturing at a later time in his career, and maybe he's better than they thought he was?
Well, I can tell you this. I've seen him in Clearwater the last 2 springs. I was very impressed with him down in Clearwater. In fact, this year, watching him in mid-March, I basically thought, okay, well, considering that Brad Miller, I was down there when Brad Miller had his injury. I thought, okay, well, maybe Maton sticks around a little bit and has a shot at the opening day roster. But they did option him to minor league camp early. But what I thought I saw of him was somebody who would be a very good bench player for the Phillies. Kind of the comparison I make in the mailbag is Enrique Hernandez, but from the left side of the plate. Somebody who can count on in the infield, definitely in the middle infield. If somebody is out for a short stretch, if Didi's, as we saw, Didi a couple times out with injuries, you don't feel like you're just abandoning the position by putting him in for a week, right? So I think he's a nice player that can fill in up the middle. I would explore if he could maybe play some other positions to help you out. I mean, if Brad Miller's in the outfield. Maybe he's somebody who could take some at bats in the outfield if necessary. So I always thought he was a really good-looking bench potential player. However, I will say this: some guys will play themselves out of that and into more. Our sample size is still pretty small right now, and even the Enrique Hernandez I mentioned, he kind of got a starting job this year when he hit free agency. So who knows? He could be a nice bench player, and then at some point, a team gives him a shot as a starter. Maybe there's an injury at some point for the Phillies. He has to be the starter for the year, and you'll get to see if he can handle that or not. But I think he's been very impressive. I like his defense, and I like his bat. He makes a lot of good contact.
I mean, it was the whole offense essentially for a time there on Saturday. I mean, he had a couple of homers. Sunday, a couple of homers in the game. I mean, he has hit the ball. Sometimes, he looks a little overmatched, but he certainly has. I don't know. I mean, do you see him as a guy that's going to be on the major league roster the rest of the year?
I think he's got a real shot. I mean, let's face it. He was somebody else. He was on the Double-A roster at the end of 2019, and he had just been promoted midseason. So he was playing very, very well at Class A Clearwater. He goes to Double-A. He didn't hit as well, but if he had a 2020 minor league season, he would have probably started double A, ended up at triple A, and might be better prepared. So he kind of had to make the leap. I think that's going to be the case for a lot of major leaguers. They would have had to make the leap from double A given the circumstances of COVID. And he's showing that maybe he did a lot of that development on his own.
It's weird because you wonder how many guys like this slip through the crack. Like, no one's ever heard of this guy. He's not on your
Hmm.
top 30 minor league prospect. He's not on the Phillies prospect list anywhere, right? I never seen him on any list. You bring him up and you're thinking, here's just a guy that they don't care if they're burning one of his, trips up and down from the minor leagues. And you wonder how many guys like this just slip through the cracks that they don't view as in high regard as somebody else.
Well, I will point this out. Nick Maton was on the 40-man roster. The Phillies did make that decision to put him on that roster, protecting him from being taken in the Rule 5 draft. So at least internally, the Phillies thought a lot of him. I mean, it doesn't matter what somebody else's prospect list says. If he's in your organization and you evaluate him as a potential helpful piece, well, then you roll with it, right? So they put him on the 40-man. So I think that says something there.
All right, last one. Got about 2 minutes here, Frank, because this one is a tough one. And Mike wants to know, not this Mike, another Mike. He says, what kind of moves do you think the Phillies can make to get through this injury stretch?
All right. Well, I have a whole list here. Hopefully, I don't take up the whole 2 minutes, but they need 40-man roster space. They need backup help. What I would do, I would designate for assignment the contract of David Hale. You might say, well, that seems so obvious. Well, people have also pointed out that he's somebody that Joe Girardi has a relationship with, and they signed him to be sort of a veteran depth piece. But you know what? If we were at the point where Chase Anderson, Matt Moore, they're being bumped out of the starting rotation and into the bullpen, how many long men do you want to have, right? So they need that 40-man roster spot with somebody else. In fact, you might even be able to deal with Enyel De Los Santos filling in at times because he can go up and down the Northeast extension to Lehigh Valley. I also think the Phillies should put somebody on the IL, maybe somebody like DJ Gregorius. If in normal circumstances he would have eked it out another day or two and he'd be okay. They need a living, breathing player that's a position player. So I would make sure DD gets onto that 10-day injured list. And because you DFA'd David Hale, then now you have room to bring Ronald Torreyes back. Now, I don't know if Torreyes is going to be the long-term solution on the bench, but at least he's somebody who can help you right now. I think Archie Bradley's coming back today. I'm waiting to hear what's going on with that. And, that certainly helps fill the bullpen spot vacated by Hale. Now the other thing is going to depend on what's up with Scott Kingery. Is he going to go in the concussion protocol, hitting the wall the way he did? If he doesn't, I would pull what I wrote about a while back, which is perhaps designating Kingery for assignments. See if he goes through waivers and you can assign him to Lehigh Valley. It might be worth the roll of the dice. He's due $18 million. If he gets through waivers, you get a roster spot. If somebody claims him, good luck to him somewhere else. But the Phillies are at the point where they need that spot, and then maybe you can start to look for creative ways to fill spots. I mean, you might have to go to AAA and grab somebody like Luke Williams, who's hitting very, very well.
Yeah.
But Luke Williams is somebody who can play around the
and the fact that they don't have
a
a legit outfielder in their system anywhere, they have nobody in the system to play the outfield is unbelievable. Frank Klose. Check out his mailbag, of course, every Tuesday. If you want your question answered, just hit him up on Twitter at Frank Klose, and maybe we'll answer your question here on the Phillies mailbag segment. Frank is back on Tuesday, and, of course, he, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, Frank, watch that bear behind you.
Sure will. Thanks, Mike.
Take care.